Have you ever noticed that the calmest person in the room is often carrying the heaviest burden? Today, we're going to explore that hidden weight of being the strong one. The person who seems to have it all together, but is carrying something no one else can even see.
It's a familiar idea, isn't it? We all know that person, the one who just seems to absorb chaos and return calm, the one everyone leans on. And because they seem so incredibly capable, we often just forget to ask if they're okay.
So to really understand this, we're going to follow the story of a man named Daniel. His journey, it reveals the profound price of that constant composure and the really difficult path back to just feeling real.
Okay, so let's start by looking at the mask that Daniel wore. On the outside, he was the absolute picture of strength. But this performance of calm, it was an armor, and it was hiding a deep, deep internal struggle. See, on the surface, Daniel was everything people admired, right? He was regulated, calm, composed, always grateful. But beneath all that, a totally different reality was brewing. He was living with this chronic tension, this constant readiness to suppress any emotion before it could ever become visible. And it was all driven by an avoidance he didn't even realize was there. And you can imagine, this constant self-monitoring had a chilling effect. His inner world just started to shrink. He was physically present everywhere, except inside himself. He was observing moments, but he wasn't truly living them. It's a profound kind of alienation, not from society, but from your own self. For a long time, this system, it worked for him. But here's the thing, the body doesn't play along with avoidance forever. Eventually, it starts to protest. It starts sending these signals that something is deeply, deeply wrong, even when the mind is insisting that everything is perfectly fine. His body's protest, it began subtly. Restless sleep, a mind that just raced at night, replaying tiny, insignificant conversations. A tightness in his chest, even during moments that weren't stressful at all. He went to doctors, of course, but they found nothing clinically wrong. And that is such a crucial point. Nothing wrong doesn't mean nothing is happening.
And this brings us to the first part of a really powerful psychological truth. All those feelings Daniel had been pushing down, the grief, the anger, the fear, they didn't just poof, disappear. They had to go somewhere. So they transformed into physical sensations in his body.
And that unexpressed emotion, that constant physical sensation, it eventually becomes something even heavier. It becomes this existential weight, a kind of deep tiredness that no amount of sleep can ever fix. Daniel carried this weight everywhere he went, without a single complaint, until he just couldn't anymore.
This was the turning point. Not some dramatic breakdown, but a moment of absolutely terrifying stillness. He was just looking out at the city lights and felt nothing. No sadness, no peace, just a void. And that absence, that numbness, was more frightening than any pain he'd ever felt, because pain, at least, proves you're alive.
So why? Why did he do this to himself? Why build this armor of calm in the first place? Well, this next part is all about unmasking the true purpose of his constant positivity. See, it was never really about optimism. It was about control. He eventually learned a term for his strategy, toxic positivity. And this definition is so key. It's not about being too happy, no. It's about using optimism as a defensive weapon to just bypass difficult, messy emotions like grief and anger and fear. It's a shield you use to maintain a sense of control.
And this gets to the core illusion of it all. For Daniel, control felt like safety. If he could manage his emotions, he felt secure. But here's the powerful distinction. Safety is not the same as truth. And he had been sacrificing his own truth for a feeling of safety. This pattern was so ingrained in him that even in therapy, a place literally designed for feeling, he couldn't stop. His language was abstract, detached. When he was asked what he felt, he would offer these complex explanations. He was analyzing his emotions from a distance, doing anything he could to avoid actually experiencing them.
So, this brings us to the most difficult part of his whole journey, the actual work of reconnection. I mean, how do you learn to feel again when your entire life has been built on avoiding it? Well, it's a slow, challenging, and often really disorienting process.
He basically had to learn a completely new, totally counterintuitive skill set. So instead of instantly reframing a negative thought into a positive one, he learned to just pause. Instead of trying to fix an uncomfortable sensation in his body, he learned to simply sit with it. And maybe most importantly, he had to learn to allow his emotions to just exist without needing to justify them or explain them away.
Now, it's really important to get this. This was not some inspiring self-help montage from a movie. It was messy. It was disorienting. Sadness would just appear out of nowhere. Anger would surface unexpectedly. It felt completely chaotic because, for the first time, he wasn't controlling the flow of his own inner life. But over time, he had this profound realization. The pain he was starting to feel, it wasn't random at all. It was stored. It was the emotional record of every loss he'd ever rushed past, every boundary he had let someone cross, every single moment he had minimized his own feelings just to make things easier for other people.
And this incredible realization, it leads him to the final transformative stage of his journey. He started to discover a kind of freedom, not in being happy, but in being real. He found a new and way more profound definition of what it actually means to be strong.
This right here, this was the core philosophical shift. He had spent his entire life treating his emotions like obstacles to overcome or problems to solve. And he finally understood they're not. They are signals, signals to be interpreted. They don't ask to be fixed. They simply ask to be felt. And this led to a powerful redefinition of strength. It turns out, real strength isn't about endurance without expression. Real strength is the capacity to stay present with your feelings, all of them, without fleeing. It's the courage to remain without your armor. And this is the ultimate outcome of his journey. The goal was never happiness. That was the old surface-level objective. He didn't necessarily become happier. He became real. And in that messy, imperfect, honest reality, he found something much, much deeper: meaning. Which leaves us with a final question to think about. In a world that so often rewards performance over presence, what would it look like for you to put down the armor and simply be real?